Guys, so right now we're going to talk about blending modes, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to use them. There are a lot of different options with blending modes, and most of them you won't use, but I'm going to show you the ones that you typically would use as a photographer. And so first, to just show you where the blending modes are, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my layer by Command J, and now it allows you to change the blending modes. It will only allow you to change the blending modes on layers that are not the background layer. So you see it's grayed out and you can't click it or change it. So as soon as I duplicate that background, or I have a curves adjustment or any other type of adjustment, it will let me do that. So these are your blending modes here. And they're broken into different categories. So you have your normal, which is what it by default is. And then you have your darkening blending modes. You have your light blending modes. These ones tend to add contrast. And these ones down here are things to do with coloring. The ones that you typically are going to use, and the ones that I use a lot, tend to be multiply, screen, overlay, and soft light, with the ones that I use most of the time being soft light and screen. But I'm going to just go ahead and show you how you can use these. So first we have this image over here, and you can use blending modes to add, oh, that's the wrong one. Cute image of my dog. You can use these to add color pops, or to darken areas of an image, or to lighten areas of an image. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you that really fast. So the basic way to use blending modes would be to duplicate the layer by Command J and then changing this to soft light. And you'll see that it adds an automatic punch of color. It does, however, saturate the skin. It does crush the black sometimes, and overlay is just a more intense version of soft light. So I almost never use overlay. Sometimes I will, but I mostly use soft light. And so you can, like all other layers, decrease the opacity of the layer. You can also add a mask to the layer. So if I have it at 100%, I can come down to my mask button down here like we learned before and do option and add a black mask. I can also invert that mask by using the shortcut Command I and invert the mask. And so if it's black, I will need to paint on with a white brush where I want that effect to go. So I'll go ahead and hit the B key to bring up my brush tool, and I know that this is a black mask, so the top needs to be white. And then I'll use my bracket keys next to the letter P, and I can just brush this on. I'm going to raise the opacity of that so you can see what I'm doing. And so you can brush it wherever you want, at whatever strength you want. Again, like you will hear us say multiple times, the biggest thing to watch out for is skin tone. So that actually looks really nice. It adds that pop of color. The other way you can do it, if you wanted to, say, darken just the background, you could Command J and change it to multiply right here. And you'll notice that it makes it very dark. And so again, if I hold down my option button and make a mask, then I can just brush this on to the background where the mountains are. And this is a nice way to add some color pop, especially if you're shooting outside or outdoors and you want to darken the areas around. Sorry, I was focusing. So you have this. So you can lower the opacity of that also, again, just like any other blending mode. Now let's say I'm going to go ahead and just darken their skin really fast. Now let's say you wanted to brighten their skin. So screen, you can Command J and change this to screen. And you can lower the opacity of that also. And I'll go ahead and create a black mask and use my white brush. And I can use it to selectively brighten areas of the photo. So say I need to brighten their faces, I can do that. And so that looks significantly better, obviously. So let me go ahead and bring back my original image. Okay, so that is one way to use blending modes. The other way is with textures. And so I have this image here, And she's just sitting on seamless paper. It's a gorgeous, simple image. I love it just the way it is. But let's say you wanted something just a little bit more artistic. You can use blending modes with textures. And so I have this texture here. So I'll just Command A and Command C to copy it. And I'll come over here and Command V to paste it on. And then I'll select V on my keyboard, and that will bring up my Move tool, and that will allow me to move my texture. If it doesn't fill the space, this texture happens to be smaller than the photo size, so it's not filling the photo, so I need to fill the photo. So Command T will bring up the free transform box, and if you hold down your Shift button, it will maintain the proportions of the texture. If you let go of your Shift button, you can move the texture around however you want. So I'll go ahead and hit Enter. And now I can't see the bottom layer because the blending mode on this image is on normal. And so it's just showing it to me at 100%. Now I could lower the opacity of this layer of the texture, and this is what you end up with. And it's not blending the two together. It's not blending the top one with the bottom one. And so it's not as nice as it could be. And I don't really care for the way that this looks. And so like on the other image, we can choose another blending mode. So now we've got soft light. So let me go ahead and put that up at 100% so you can see what that's doing. So it's blending that in, but you still have it on the skin. And so you could come down and create a mask holding down the Option button and then trying to brush it on to the background. Or you could do it another way, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'll go ahead and get rid of this mask here. So this is what we have. And so first, I'm going to show you, if you wanted to see what this texture would look like in different blending modes, it's a little cumbersome to come here and select Overlay, and then come back and select Difference, and come back and select Screen. So the easy way to do this is if you have it on normal, you can go ahead and press the Shift button and make sure that your tool over here is on your Move tool. If it's on any of these tools down here, this will not work. So once it's on this, you've got this top one selected, hold down the Shift button, and you can press the plus and minus sign to go through the different blending modes. So you can kind of just quickly run through and see which one you're drawn to. And so right here, Overlay and Soft Light. I like the way Soft Light looks, but I'll go through them all really fast so you can see what they look like. So I'll come over to Soft Light now again. Come on. There it is. Okay, so now if I wanted to delete the texture, there's a couple of different ways that I can do that. You need to be careful when you apply a texture that's got some color tone to it, because if you just erase the texture using your erase tool, your subject is not going to match the background and the coloring of the background, and it will start looking pretty funny. And so there's a couple of ways. You could just come in and use the erase tool if you wanted to and erase it. But again, like I said, I don't really like the way that that looks. I don't feel like she blends in with the background. And so let me go ahead and come back to that. Okay, so what I will do is there's a couple of different ways. You would select the W button on your keyboard to bring up your quick selection tool. And again, the brackets next to the letter P will make it bigger or smaller. And I'm just going to select her face to show you really fast. Command plus will zoom in. And so we're already at 200% since this is a smaller image, but I will just show you. So I will select, and then I will select a little bit more. And if I feel like maybe it's selected too much, like if it comes out to the edge here, I can make my selection tool smaller using the bracket keys, hold down the Option button, and then I can refine that a little bit more. And as long as I'm holding down the Option button, it will subtract from that quick selection tool. If I let go of the Option button, it will add. So you just want to make sure it's a super helpful tool. So I'll go ahead and add just a little bit more. And now the biggest thing that you want to do, especially when you're just removing texture from one particular area, like her face or her arms, but you want it everywhere else, you don't want a harsh line, because that will be obvious and you'll be able to see where the texture ends and it won't blend very well. And that's kind of the purpose of doing all this, is to make it blend well. So I'll go ahead and just kind of bring the texture back. I don't want the texture deleted completely off of the flowers. Okay, so I feel like that's good. So now I'm going to need to feather that so it's softer, because right now if I was to do anything, it would have a harsh line. So if I come up to select and then modify and feather, and you'll notice that the shortcut key for that is the Shift and F6 button. You can bring this up and you can feather as much as you need to feather. If it's on a full size, full res image, I would select probably between 40 and 50. But again, I would play with that number. So I'm going to go ahead and feather at 20, and you're going to notice that these edges get much smoother. So I'll go ahead and hit, do you see how that got much smoother? And so then there's a couple of ways to do this. So you can come to Filter, Blur, Average, and it will get rid of that. And you can notice that now there's not a harsh line. The other way to do it would be Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And the nice thing about that is it keeps a lot of the coloring. I feel like the Average kind of gets rid of some of the coloring, but the Gaussian Blur keeps a lot of the color and the tone and the exposure with the texture. And as you put this closer to 0, you can see where you need to raise that up to get rid of the texture. But if you pay attention to her eyes and her face, she's not blurry. So if I get rid of the texture completely, just focus on her eyes, and you will notice that her features are just as sharp as they were without the texture. Her face and the overall exposure is a little bit darker, but that is blending in and it's matching the feeling of the texture. And so again, you would want to do it over here on her arms. Go ahead and select this area and hold down my Option button to deselect the background. Okay, and then I will come over to Select, Modify, Feather, and I will feather that, and then I will go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I will get rid of that texture. And I could do the same right here. Another thing you can do is you can invert the coloring of that texture. So you have this texture and it's blue, so I can just select the layer and Command I, and it will create a warm type of texture because it's just the opposite of that blue. So if I come over here, you can see Command I, it turns that texture into that. And so coming over onto this image, it creates a much warmer image than the moody bluer image. So again, I can just lower the opacity of that, and there's so many options. I can also, if you didn't want any coloring but you just wanted the texture of the image, see how there's look at her dress, there's some bluish tone to it. And if you look at the texture here, if you select the texture and you go up to image adjustments and desaturate, it will turn that black and white. So now the original coloring of the image is there, but now it's just added this black and white filter. And so it's just making her skin a little bit darker. And now you can lower the opacity of that. And now it's just a black and white texture that's going on top of her. So I can show you on this one. If I just come up to image mode adjustments, oh my gosh, I always do that. Image adjustments, desaturate, you'll see it just turns it black and white. And again, you can still invert that also. So I could, now that it's black and white, I could invert that, and that's what that would look like. So there's tons of options. And if I came over with multiply, it would look like this. If I came over with screen, it would look like this. And there's a million options with the different blending modes. And so my biggest piece of advice is to just play with them and figure out which one that you like the most and which ones you gravitate towards. So I hope that has been helpful, and we will see you in our next lesson.